properties of branching coefficients. Branching. Thanks.
Yes, my talk is about a very classical problem. It's called branching problem. So I need to take two connected complex reductive groups, one containing the other one, GGR. And I am interested in representation of these groups, so I fix maximal theory and Borel subgroups in such a way the irreducible modules are parameterized by a set of dominant weights. So I am interested in branching problem. So I introduce the multiplicity function, starting with two representations, one of the small group and one of the bigger group. I am interested in the representation of the dual of the first one and the second one. Okay. It is a classical question, as I said before. We can recover the Koska coefficients, Little-Richardson coefficients, or also Kronecker coefficients. Today, to simplify the lecture, I will be mostly interested in the case when the small group is G, diagonally embedded in G cross G, which corresponds to the tensor product decomposition. Okay. The question to understand this multiplicity function can be understood by several ways. For example, we can want to find an algorithm to compute these coefficients. We can want to find a positive description of these numbers. And it is not my aim today. Today I want to speak about qualitative properties. I just start with a very simple example. Here is the decomposition of the tensor product of two irreducible representations of SL3. And this decomposition is given by some multiplicities drawn on this picture. And everybody can see that the non-zero coefficients are located in some region. They seem to belong to some lattice, sublattice of the whole one. And the coefficient seems to be smaller on the boundary than in the interior. It is this kind of property we want to understand and to describe. Okay. Now I start by the very first qualitative result that I state that as a theorem may be well known. Okay. These multiplicities are actually very regular. They are given by piecewise quasi-polynomial functions. More precisely, there exists a GIT fan. This is a collection of polyhedral convex cones. A fan, yes, defined in terms of geometric invariant theory, and I called it the GIT fan. And each time we take a maximal cone in this fan, the multiplicities are given by a finite family of polynomial functions. And when you want to compute one coefficient corresponding to nu hat, to decide what polynomial function you choose, this choice depends on the class of the points modulo some sublattice, cofinite sublattice. Just to illustrate this statement, I give an example. The big group is the group spin 5, and the small group is just the maximal torus. Dominant weight for the big group is parameterized by its coordinate in the base of fundamental weights. And a weight of the small group, T, is parameterized as this beta 1 and beta 2 coordinate of some weights in the base of roots. Okay. Then the multiplicity is given by this formula, unless if the coordinates of nu hat satisfy these four inequalities. So these four inequalities determine a polyhedral cone, and inside this polyhedral cone, the multiplicity is given by this formula. This formula is almost a polynomial function, but almost only because of this term. The last term is not polynomial. But obviously, if beta 1 plus mu 1 is odd, this becomes a polynomial, and if beta 1 plus nu 1 is even, this becomes also a polynomial. So we have two polynomials depending on the class of nu hat modulo some sublattice. And the picture is always like that. Okay. Now the natural question is to want to describe this GIT file. But this question, as we will see later, is from an algorithmic point of view very hard. So today I am first interested in the support of this GIT file. Actually, the support of this GIT file is the asymptotic support of the multiplicity function. This means that it is a set of points such that up to scalar multiplication, the coefficient is non-zero. And because of this statement, for example, the support is a closed convex polyhedral cone. And now I want to describe explicitly this closed convex polyhedral cone. This means to determine an explicit list of linear inequalities which characterize this cone. Okay, but before doing this, I need to introduce some notations. Notation, particularly on Schubert calculus. Okay. So I consider an homogeneous space for the group G. In other words, I fix a parabolic subgroup, and I assume this parabolic subgroup is maximum. So I consider the homogeneous space, projective homogeneous space. For example, we can obtain the Grassmannian of Kaplan in Cn, Cn, or for the group, for the symplectic group, the Grassmannian of isotropic subspace of C power 2n. Okay, I introduced standard notation about the cohomology of this homogeneous space. Because of the Breuer decomposition, this cohomology group is very well understood because it admits a base denoted by sigma W, which is obtained taking classes of some varieties called Schubert varieties. And this base is parameterized by some subset of the Weil group object. This is the additive structure of this object. But we also have a multiplicative structure, multiplication, the cup product, which is because we have a base determined by the value of the product on the base. This value is given by a kind of multiplication table, the collection of coefficients parameterized by the triples of elements of the base. These coefficients are actually non-negative integers because they count the number of points satisfying some incident relations. Okay, very standard notation. Now I want to emphasize the fact that this ring is graded. So we have a graduation. I precise it now. The degree of the base element is given by actually the codimension of this variety, or up to factor 2. And this codimension can be expressed combinatorially as the dimension of the whole space minus the cardinality of this set. This set, denoted as phi of W, is a set of inversion of W. It is a set of negative roots that belongs positive when I apply W. It is the set used to define the length of W. Oh. And to express that this ring is the fact that this ring is graded by this degree is the fact that this implication is true. If some structure coefficient is non-zero, we have to satisfy some equality of degrees, which is this one. Okay. Now, as the title says, I want to introduce different products on this group by refining this condition. Okay. To do this, I denote by L the Levy subgroup of P containing T, which is a reductive group contained in the parabolic subgroup. And we consider the action of the group on the tangent space of G mod P, the Lie algebra of G modulo the Lie algebra of P. Okay, since L is reductive, we have a decomposition of this module as a sum of irreducible ones. I denoted by I a set of index set of index just. Two examples. For the ordinary Grassmannian, this space is a space of homomorphism from Ck to Cl minus k, and the Levy subgroup is GLK cross GLN, and so the module is irreducible. So the cardinal of I is 1. But I let for you as a small exercise the fact that in this case, the cardinal of I is 2. So this representation is not irreducible for the Levy subgroup in this case, except if k is equal to n. Okay. What I want to do with this decomposition? I want to use this decomposition to make bad with the roots. So I consider this set, which is a set of roots of the action of T on the space. It is a subspace, as written somewhere here, as a set of negative roots. So negative roots which doesn't occur in P. Okay. Because we have a decomposition stable by the action of the maximal torus T, we have a decomposition, natural decomposition of this set of roots as a disjoint union indexed by this set, I. Okay. Standard fact also is that if you use the standard parametrization of the Schubert basis here, the inversion set used to express the degree condition is contained actually, this set is actually contained in this one, the standard. So we have a decomposition of this one as a disjoint union, and you can transport this, this decomposition for each set phi of W. So now I can rewrite the degree condition in the cohomology of G mod P like that. Just I count my element back by back. Okay. And the raffinement is very simple. The raffinement is to ask that this equality does not hold only globally, but for each part. I ask that the condition is true for each I in I. It is a stronger condition, at least if the cardinal of I is 2. Okay, in this case, if the stronger degree condition is satisfied, we define the new coefficient to be the odd one. And if this condition is not fulfilled, we define this coefficient to be 0. Okay, now we just construct a multiplication table for some bilinear product denoted like that. This formula defines a bilinear product on the group on the cohomology group of G mod P. Okay. The theorem by Belkade-Kumar asserts that this construction is worse because it gives an associative product. It is not absolutely not obvious, but it is true. This product, defined by this multiplication table, is associative. Okay. And I need this product to characterize, I recall the goal. The goal was to determine this cone, the support of the JIT fan, by finitely many linear inequalities. Now I can do it. Okay, it is the statement which describes this cone. And I assume to simplify notation, it is just to simplify the talk, that the big group is G2 and the G diagonally embedded in G2. Okay, I consider the tensor product decomposition. Okay, I take a point, it is a dominant weight for G and here dominant weight for G hat, and I ask if this point belongs or not to the cone. The answer is it belongs to the cone if and only if these linear inequalities are satisfied for any point, for the point, u1, u2, u2. Okay. This is a linear function in u1, u2, u2. Now, what are the parameters for these inequalities? Parameters are alpha, which is a simple root, and w1, w2, w3, which are actually Schubert classes for the maximal parabolic subgroup associated to alpha. To each alpha, we have an associated parabolic subgroup, and we have 3 classes here. And the inequalities we have to consider to characterize this cone are exactly those satisfying this condition, expressed in terms of the Beccali-Kumar product. Actually, using Poincare equalities, this condition is equivalent to the fact that some structure coefficient is equal to 1. So you have to obtain the description of this, we have to write the multiplication tables of various G mod P, and each one we have a 1 in this multiplication table, you get an inequality. And this set of inequality characterizes the cone. Okay? Now there is a more, it is actually my contribution to this statement, it is there is a more precise result that asserts that this list of inequalities is irredundant. This means exactly that each inequality here corresponds to a codimension 1 face of this curve. Okay, it was the first statement I want to mention. Okay, we just described this cone, which can be viewed as the asymptotic support of the multiplicity function. So now a natural question is to ask for the true support, not the asymptotic one of this function. I want to mention to review some results on this question. So I introduce a notation, I denote by this the support of the multiplicity function. Same. First, there is a qualitative result that asserts that this set, as a subset of this, which is without the plus, this is a lattice. As a subset of this lattice, this set is a finitely generated semigroup. So it is stable by addition and finitely generated by this operation. So it is a semigroup and it is contained in the cone. So it is natural to ask if this semigroup is the set of integral points of this cone. Integral means belonging to the group generated by the semigroup, some point. A small result, not very hard, asserts that we can describe this group easily. Just. So the only thing you have to keep of this statement is that it is easy to describe this set. So we know the cone, we know the group, and so we get a lattice, a semigroup, sorry, a set of integral points in the cone, and this lattice contains this one that we want to understand. Now it is natural to ask if it is an equality or not, and there is traditionally in the literature there is a quantity, a introduced as a measure of the strictness of this inequality. This quantity is called the saturation factor. Okay, an integer, positive integer g, is called the saturation factor if each time we take a point in the big semigroup, we can get a point in the small semigroup just by multiplying by d. So if d is equal to 1, d is equal to 1 exactly means that the fact that 1 is the saturation factor exactly means that the two semigroups are equal. Now I want to review the main results on this question of determining explicit saturation factor in the next picture. Okay, we call the definition. In the case of G contains G cross G, explicit saturation factors are known. We know that there exists saturation factors, so the fact is to find an explicit one. Okay, the most famous saturation factor is 1 in type A, and this is the famous saturation theorem by Knudsen and Tao, reproved by different methods by Kapovic-Wilson, Mercado, and Damas. For the other classical types, B, C, D, the best known coefficient is 2 with contribution by Hong Chen, very recent, Stephen Sam, Berkalik. I don't give a lot of details, dependent for spin and SO is not the same, for example, so I don't want to give a lot of details. For G2, we can compute by hand, and you get that 2 and 3 are saturation factors. For F4, the best saturation factor known is this one. And for E6 type, we have to use the Kapovic-Milson uniform results. Actually, they have a uniform result, which is the best one in these 3 cases. Okay. I wanted to mention that there are still a lot of open questions on these saturation factors. I want to mention 3 conjectures. The 2 first ones are due to Kapovic, and a lot of people belong to these 2 conjectures. The last one is due to Pasquier and myself, and maybe not a lot of people belong to this, but I belong to. Okay. The first conjecture is that the semigroup should be saturated for the simplest types, so in type A, D, E. You see that for E8 we have a lot of work. The second conjecture is that if X is regular, this implication should be true with D is equal to 1. So the wall in the semigroup should only occur on the boundary of the dominant cone. This is a conjecture, there is no counterexample. And the last conjecture may be more endeavor than this one, I guess. It is another, not for the tensor product, but for another branching problem. This conjecture is checked by explicit computation for small n's. Okay, now I want to go to an apparently different question, a spectral question. Actually, it's a description of this, I don't need to come back. It's a description of the cone, of the support of the JIT fan is so, maybe, yes, I will say the word. It's so famous is that because it has a spectral interpretation very elementary. So I want to explain the spectral interpretation of this cone now. I fix a compact form, a maximal compact subgroup on G, and I consider its Lie algebra and the coadjunct action of K on on this dual of the real algebra. The standard fact is that the set of coadjuvant orbits is bijectively parameterized by the set of points in the dominant cone, real points on the dominant cone. As an example, the set of Hermitian matrices up to conjugacy by the unitary group are characterized by the spectrum of the matrix, and the spectrum of an Hermitian matrix is a collection of real numbers that I can assume to be non-increasing. So we obtain this kind of bijection. Now, the spectral question we ask is the following one. We want to describe the set denoted by C of k, the set of triples of coadjuvant orbits, such that we can obtain 0 by summing one element of the first orbit, one element of the second orbit, and one element of the third one. If you think about this question a little bit differently, we can think we fix two orbits, ONU1, ONU3. You consider all the sum you can form using element of these two orbits, and you ask, we want to describe it as a union of orbits, the opposite of this one. Explicitly, for the case in type A, for the linear groups, the problem is the following. We assume we have two matrices, Hermitian matrices, A and B, and we assume that we only know the spectrum of these matrices. Not the complete matrices, but only the conjugacy classes, only the spectrum. So, and the question is, what can be said? What can be said about the spectrum of the sum of the two matrices? It is the standard Horn question. It is very standard because the history of this question starts by Hermann Weyl. If you are interested in, you have two very well-written surveys, one by Fulton and more recently one by Kummer. And the relation with your problem to describe the support of the GIT fan is very strong because we have completely an equality between this set. So between the answer to these questions and the support of the GIT fan. I put commas because this is a real object and this is a rational object. It is the only difference between the two. Right. Okay. Okay. This is the spectral interpretation of this code. And I wanted to mention this spectral interpretation because I want to introduce now a multiplicative version of it. Okay. The multiplicative version is obtained by considering not the coadjuvant of action of K, but instead the action of K on itself by conjugation. Now, the set of conjugacy classes, the set of orbits, are parameterized not by the fundamental cone, but by the fundamental alcove, which is a subset of the fundamental cone. Actually, if G is simple, I assume it is simple, A is a simplex. And what is the multiplicative equivalent to this condition? It is this one. Okay. We take three conjugacy classes and we ask if the product of these three conjugacy classes contains the neutral element of K or not. The story starts similarly because this set, as a subset of the product of these three simplices, is a convex polyton. So, to describe this set, we can ask for a list of inequalities. It is what I want to explain now, but I need some preparation, as before. Okay. I recall that before, the preparation I needed to answer the additive question was about Schubert calculus, or cohomology of homogeneous spaces. Now the preparation is quantum Schubert calculus. Okay, so I introduce the quantum rings of the homogeneous spaces. So G mod P is still an homogeneous space. Now I use the parameterization by the simple roots. And I consider the cohomology group. The cohomology group is a module over this polynomial ring. Q is a new variable introduced to this. Okay. So, as before, the additive structure of this module is very simple. And what we want to understand is the multiplication. What is the multiplication? The multiplication is also given certainly by a multiplication table. And the coefficients which appear in this multiplication table are Gromov-Witten invariants. The Gromov-Witten invariants before the multiplicities contain the numbers of points satisfying some incidence relations. Now the Gromov-Witten invariants counts the numbers of degree D curves in G mod P satisfying some incidence relation. This is analogous, or generalization to be more precise. Okay. Okay, well, multiplication table. Now, this ring is still graded, and the degree of the generator sigma W didn't change, but we have this new variable Q, and I have to explain what is the degree of Q. The degree of Q is given by this formula. This formula is obtained by summing some quantities. The sum, what is important for us, is indexed by this set, phi of G mod P, the same set as before. I recall we decomposed this space as a union of disjoint union of subspace of subsets. So now I can play the same game as before, doing this. The grading on the quantum cohomology ring means that if some Gromov-Witten invariant is not zero, then we have to satisfy some degree condition, which is actually this one. And this condition can certainly be expressed as sum over I, and so I can reinforce it by asking it is fulfilled for any I. Okay. It is the same, I hope. Yes. It is the same, but I guess that it is fulfilled for any I. And I define this deformed, this simplified as you want. The ring is deformed and the coefficients are simplified. The coefficients, the simplified Gromov-Witten coefficients to be equal to no, here we have to cancel this exponent. To be equal to the standard one if the stronger degree condition is fulfilled, and to zero otherwise. And we define a product on this on this ring, on this group by this formula. And the story follows similarly. It is still associative. We once more get an associative product. Okay, now I can state the description of the polytope P of K. As before, I take a point and I ask if this point belongs or not to the polytope. So I take three conjugacy classes, and I ask if the product contains E or not. The answer is yes, if and only if these inequalities are satisfied. What are the parameters of these inequalities? The parameters are, as before, a simple root. As before, three Schubert classes for this group we have Q, or for this group, and a new ingredient, which is the degree D. And this is given as to satisfy this condition, which is very similar to the additive case. An observation is that it is, one can explain that this is similar to the additive case. It is essentially because conjugacy classes near the neutral element is more or less an element of the Lie algebra. So the problem can be linearized, and it is, we can prove that we have to recover the last theorem as a corollary of this one. So it is a first explanation for the similarity. Okay. And the last point is also the same as before. It is that this list of inequalities is the minimal one. Okay. Because before there was a result by Telemann and Woodward with a redundant list of inequalities characterizing the polytope. So it is not an historical talk and a lot of lack. Okay, it is the main statement for today. Okay. Now I want to come back to some comments I made at the beginning of the lecture. The comment was that it is very difficult to make the first statement, the first qualitative statement, maybe, the fact that there exists a fan and a piecewise quasi-polynomial functions, etc. Yeah. This theorem, we started with this theorem as a motivation, and to now we only describe the polyhedral, the support of this fan. But what we want is the whole fan. But it is very, from an algorithmic point of view, very complicated to describe the whole GIT fan. To illustrate this difficulty, I want to show you some the result of some computations. Okay, this is the we know this this theorem is completely explicit, so we can describe explicitly this code. And I made computation for small groups. This computation for this this list of groups gives this theorem for each group gives a list of linear inequalities. Here is the number of inequalities we obtain. We see that for even for this group of rank 6, we have a lot of inequalities. So it is intractable from an algorithmic point of view to help to understand how this cone can be divided in as a fan. For curiosity, I computed the set of vertices. And we have the list and the cardinality of the list. Here I cannot get the list of vertices. I just want to mention that the way to go from the second column to the third one is completely algorithmic. This is a linear algebra. Okay, I have to thank the normalized software. Okay. Because from a theoretical point of view, I don't understand the set of vertices.
Can I ask a question? Why does it go down sometimes from spin 10 to 11 and from 12 to 13? Do you have an explanation?
From 10 to 11, it is not the same. Yeah, from 10 to 11, these groups are not of the same type. It is the first explanation. This one is not very bigger than this one. Okay. Okay, and yes. I also used the software by Anders Bohr to compute the Gromov-Witten invariance. It is because okay, it's not very important. Now I want to finish my lecture by mentioning some open questions. The first open question is about this new from 7 years ago. This object, this ring, defined before, is not really, I think, well understood because, for example, nobody knows a satisfactory set of generators, and so nobody knows a set of generators with associated relations for this ring. And to compute explicitly from an algorithmic point of view in this ring, we want a system of generators and relations. It is not no. The second question I can mention is we describe a polyhedral cone by a list of inequalities. It is at least so natural to want to describe it by a set of rays. I am not able to describe the set of rays of this polyhedral cone, and for the multiplicative case, the set of vertices. Okay. Each time we have the analogous question in the multiplicative case. Now, the third question is about the saturation question for the multiplicative case. I didn't explain, but if you think about the problem to describe the LR of G3 as a discretization of the problem to describe this one, okay, the support of the multiplicative function is a discrete version of the question of describing the cone. There also exists a discrete version of the multiplicative problem. This discrete version is expressed in terms of fusion product, given by Berlin formula. There are some known results to this question. In type A, the question is completely solved by Berkeley because he proved that the constant factor 1 is okay. There is also an homogeneous generalization of the fusion product, and in this case also the D is equal to 1 more. In other type, no result is known. The last question, very exciting maybe, is to try to understand the equivalent of this cone, so the asymptotic support of the tensor product decomposition for symmetrizable or at least affine Kac-Moody groups. There are first step work by Brown and Kumar. They stated an explicit conjecture describing this cone, which is not polyhedral in this case, not the finiteness. And they checked their conjecture on these two small cases for with Carter notations. Okay, I am a little bit in advance, but I have finished. Thank you.
multiplicative card problem for the A-type, would there be some kind of nice description of the inequalities? Of course, there are inequalities that you gave, but can one make it like concrete for the, say, for instance, for type A?
Yes. Yes. The first answer, but I will give a second one later, is oh, I am not right. Okay. Is that where I am? The first answer is that this is explicit, because we can compute explicitly on the example. Okay, so the first answer not very satisfactory, I think. The second answer is that we also have the consequence of the Bell-Caillet saturation theorem is that we also have an inductive description of not the redundant as you know, but we also have an inductive description of a redundant set of inequalities, exactly as in the additive case.
Let's thank the speaker again.